We're going to talk about Elie.
Yes, Elizabeth Elie Scott. She is 31, currently lives in Salt Lake City, and she is a clinical psychologist.
Okay. All right. Sounds like a good profile. What else about Elie?
Yes, so Ellie is somebody who she'll talk about over the course of our interview here, is somebody who came from a bit of a troubled household, had a family that dealt with addiction, and was able to sort of work her way out of that situation to end up going to school, studying psychology, getting all the degrees that was necessary. And now, currently, specifically, her line of work is working with veterans through PTSD. And so she feels like there are a lot of applicable skills that could apply to the beach, and we'll get into it almost immediately. She has a very interesting origin story as to how she ended up getting into Survivor.
Okay. All right. So let's hear from Elie. Oh, Mike. Okay. We need to come up with our safe word here to stop the audio. Okay. We did last time potato. Our first
Mm-hmm.
time out, we did mailbox.
Mm-hmm.
So that means we have to say something about the game of soccer.
Yeah, so we could do, the sentence I believe was there is such grace in the game of soccer, it makes me cry. So whatever sort of noun or verb you want to pull out of there, I'm totally fine with.
Well, I'm drawn to Grace, but I think that might be confusing. That people might think that we're calling out to your Game of Thrones podcast co-host.
Yeah, and it's odd because the other 23 hours of the day, I am indeed just calling out into the ether for grace leader at any point in time. But I'm fine putting
Mhm.
some grace in here. Look, we could
Yeah,
all use a little grace in this day and age.
yeah. Or should we say soccer?
We can say soccer too, though I don't know. Will that segment our non-American listeners who are like, "Damn it, it's football. Stop saying soccer."
Hmm.
Or the
Let's
Mike or the
go.
Mike or the Mike Turners that are listening. They're like, "I don't even like soccer. I can't believe I have to say this."
Mhm. So I don't know. I like Grace is a better word to like interject with. Soccer is a soft sound to start.
Yeah, let's go with the harder sound here. Let's go with grace.
Okay.
You
All
know,
right.
let's zig when people think we'd zag, which would be assumingly a maneuver in soccer.
Haha. Okay. All right. Here's Ellie.
Why are you here on Survivor?
I started my journey of applying to Survivor thinking that I just wanted to come and be on this show because I'm obsessed with it. I'm a super fan. But throughout the process of auditioning, I've done a lot of self-reflection and realized that I've really got some things to prove to myself. I have had a lot of self-doubts since I was young, just about my capabilities. And I think I wanted to prove to myself that I could get out of my comfort zone and do something different. And just because of my profession and kind of my family system, I've always kind of been in a role of serving other people. And so this is a chance for me to be able to just focus on myself and put myself first for the first time, maybe ever.
What's your history with watching Survivor?
So I first started watching Survivor when I was young, just along with like the rest of America, and then kind of fell off for a while. But then I had somebody tell me when I was in grad school, they were like, "You've got to watch Survivor. I think it's right up your alley." And they told me that I reminded them of Michelle Fitzgerald from Cambodia, and I was interested, right? So kind of started rewatching it in vain. So I was like, I want to see this person that reminds someone of me. And she ended up winning the season. And so I was like, well, damn, maybe I'm cut out for something like this. And I just became fully obsessed. And so I've watched every season, every episode at least twice. I've seen some seasons 3 times, and I've even seen some seasons 4 times.
Wow.
So to say I'm a super fan is an understatement.
Grace. Okay.
Grace. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is a completely unique origin story for Survivor. Even decades upon decades of the show being on the air, Rob, I can't remember off the top of my head any contestants who said they started watching it and getting profusely into a show because they were told by somebody else that a contestant reminded them of them.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know necessarily like in hearing Ellie talk, I'm not getting Michelle Fitzgerald. I don't know if she necessarily like I guess they both are brunettes, but I don't really see the visual resemblance. So I'm not really sure in what way Michelle Fitzgerald was, reminding somebody of Ellie.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've seen more like close-ups of her face, either in her photos or like in the social media videos, where like I can see a bit of the facial resemblance.
Hmm.
I'm not entirely sure. Maybe Ellie just walks around psychology school kicking down structures, which we know is a
Hmm.
big Michelle Fitzgerald go-to. I will say I see a different resemblance that is perhaps closer to our own circle, Rob. Maybe it's the similarity in names, but I see a lot of Allie Lasher in Elie Scott.
Okay.
I don't know. I think it's maybe it's the similar hair. I think it's a little bit of like that sassiness that we'll get into a bit of that Survivor and reality TV super fandom. But I don't know. That's what I'm personally connecting with. And maybe Allie is sort of like the middle stage Pokemon evolution between Ellie and Michelle Fitzgerald.
Yeah. And maybe Allie had no intention to listen to this podcast, but now because that you said that this person reminds you now she's very invested.
Yeah, I say this with all the love in the world for her. That is a very Allie Lasher move, right? To be like, oh, you
Hmm.
should watch this show. There's someone that reminds you of me. Like, okay, sure, I'll check it
Yeah.
out. But I love the fact that it was a gateway, that, and I guess this is a very different form of representation, right? Of like, I look
There's
on my
somebody that
screen and
looks like
I
you.
see people like me. In this case, it was I saw this doppelganger and it got me into the
Hmm.
show.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay.
Did
So
did you
yes.
hear that recent news, by the way, Rob? That like doppelgangers have been proven or something. I feel like I saw some sort of like Yahoo Science article. I don't know
Hmm.
if this is News AF adjacent about
Yeah.
how it's been scientifically proven that like we all have at least one doppelganger that exists out there.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I feel like that maybe twice a year somebody says like on a reality show that somebody Rob, this person looks exactly like you, but it's usually like they're just like wearing a plaid shirt.
Well, that's the thing. There's a difference between that and just like generic face blindness of here's a man with like
Hmm.
semi upright black hair and a beard. They're like, oh, is that Rob? It's like the butterfly. There's a difference between the butterfly meme and like outright sharing DNA.
Hmm. Mike, have you met your doppelganger?
Oh, that's tough because similar to you, like anytime someone sees like big nose, tall, gawky guy, they're like, oh, that's you. I know for a while I certainly got like the Adam Klein
Hmm.
comparisons. I know I got a bit of the Zach Wurtenberger comparisons. I don't think I've met my one for one particularly yet.
I
I
want to meet
yearn for
them.
that day.
I
I
want to
mean,
meet
listen,
them.
I would as
Evil
well.
Mike Bloom. Yeah.
No, they'd be good Mike Bloom in this case. They'd be like squeaky clean, church boy,
Hmm.
and then I would be sort of the evil twin in that regard. And then maybe if they do show up on Survivor, would I have to be inclined to apply then? Is that the rule now?
Yeah. Could Survivor go to the lengths to find the doppelgangers and bring them out and then basically, yeah, this it would be like basically like a Survivor colon It Takes Two, where basically you come out and it's like, all right, you're all playing against the tribe of your exact doppelgangers. You are not related, but we found people that look exactly like you.
I mean, listen, I know people bash on the recruit process, but maybe we should bring it back just for that one concept.
Yeah.
It's like that MTV dating show. You ever hear of Game of Clones before?
I'm interested.
So basically, what they did was they brought on, I think for the vast majority of the time, it was like an MTV celeb. Like I think
Yeah.
Cara Maria was on, Johnny Bananas was on, and they took like, what is your perfect type of partner?
Hmm.
And they essentially,
Sounds familiar. I feel like was
yeah, they
there
had,
a Jersey Shore personality hosting?
oh, I'm sure. And then they
Hmm.
basically brought on like 4 to 5 people that looked exactly like that person. And so then it was like, okay, well, listen, beauty is only skin deep. So like, let's essentially copy the same skin from person to person and see if
Hmm.
who you exactly end up going with.
Sorry we went off on such a tangent during your segment, Ellie.
I'm so sorry, Ellie. But look, oh, I don't know if it was hosted by, no, Pauly D was on it. But
But I knew that was in there. I had that association. Yeah.
also, he said that, and so it's interesting because I guess the idea was it's not even a clone of your type; it's clones of a celebrity that you have a crush on. And
Hmm.
so for Pauly D, it was 5 clones of Megan Fox.
Hmm. Okay. They could have used some of them in the future Transformers movies. Yeah.
Not to be confused with Cassidy's spirit animal, just the fox, not Megan
Yes.
Fox.
Okay. All right. Let's go back to Ellie.
Give me one Survivor winner and one non-winner who you identify with the most.
Mm. I identify a lot with Nick Wilson as a winner. I appreciated him opening up in his season about addiction in his family and that his mom had passed away from it. I have that in my family as well. And my sister actually passed away from it. And being able to watch things like that come up in a show that's a competition television show, but also really about personal growth and this like personal journey was really important for me in my life. Also, just from a gameplay standpoint, I think his ability to kind of be underestimated. People didn't immediately see him as a strategic threat. I think maybe they thought he was out looking for idol, so he had a target on his back at first, but he was able to kind of weave around that and make really deep connections with people that lasted him throughout the game. And I think I'll be able to play similarly. In terms of a non-winner, I think that Cirie Fields is the best to never win the game. She is fantastic, and I also think I'm a lot like her. She's nurturing, she's a nurse, and so she's got kind of a similar service profession as I do. And she is a massive strategic threat, but I think sometimes is underestimated. Sometimes people, give credit to maybe a flashier, more outspoken player like a Parvati when she was just as much at the forefront of a big move like Eric giving up his idol in Micronesia. So I think that I would play a lot like Cirie as well.
What's your favorite moment in Survivor history?
I have so many favorite moments from the history of Survivor. I mean, I think the one I just mentioned where Eric gave up his idol and the amazing Black Widow Brigade was able to orchestrate that. Everybody played their part so perfectly. It was like a true team moment where everybody really orchestrated this amazing thing in Blindside. But also I love just like quirky, funny moments. I was just reminded of one today where like Billy professed his love for Candace, and it was just super awkward just thinking about how like we're sitting here kind of watching each other. We're not allowed to speak to each other before the game, thinking about how awkward that must have been, but also just like a really funny, beautiful moment. So that one came up in my mind today.
Great. Yeah. Mike, I do think that in future seasons, and we might need to say, like, besides Eric giving away the necklace, what's your favorite Survivor moment?
It's a good point, but I did realize something, and I think good on Heather, I believe it was on Twitter, who shouted this out, not Heather from Survivor 41, because I also think it also ties into a bit of like the Nick Wilson mention, which I want to get into a bit too. So remember, these people went out to play Survivor in like April, early May of 2022. What 2 seasons of Survivor are currently on Netflix? Micronesia and David versus Goliath. I have a hunch that though Elie mentioned she has watched, every season's up to 4 times. For some people, if they're like, okay, got to get up to snuff, let me rewatch what seasons are available. Oh, look, there's 2 on Netflix right now. If they're rewatching Micronesia and David versus Goliath and it pops to front of mind, then it makes sense to me as to why we're getting a lot of mentions of that. Even with David versus Goliath, like we'll talk about the Nick mentions, but like Gabby's been mentioned a lot. Christian's been mentioned a lot. We love the spare Mike White reference that happened a couple podcasts back as well. So I do wonder if there actually is a bit of a bias in the 2 Netflix seasons now that just customarily get added to, the Survivor repertoire every year and how that informs the players that are about to go on the season.
Yeah. Okay. The seasons on Netflix inform the gameplay of what's happening on Survivor now.
Yeah.
Interesting thesis.
Because I'm trying to think. So for 41 and 42, right, it was heroes versus villains and Cagayan, right? Those were the 2. So I'm trying to think like, I mean, I guess, I don't know if there was like a lot of Tony-like gameplay going on amongst the castaways in 41 or 42, but it could be interesting to think about what is top of mind in terms of seasons that you just watched. Though Elie drops like, a low-key Cook Islands reference, so she's proving her super-duper fandom, in my opinion.
Okay, let's go back to Elie.
What's one life experience you feel has prepared you most for the game?
I think that my job actually prepared me or has prepared me a lot for this game. My job is really complex. I work with veterans who have post-traumatic stress disorder, and you never know what you're going to get in any session. They might all have PTSD, but it's different for every person that is experiencing it. And so I have to think quick on my feet. I have to be able to make really deep bonds with people really immediately in the first session that you're meeting them. You're like, hi, I'm Elie. Now tell me about the worst day of your life. Okay, go. And of course, it doesn't actually happen like that, but essentially for them, they have to be able to trust you enough to tell you these really important and difficult things. And so I think, of course, everyone's coming into this a little bit different, right? We're playing a game. It's not like a therapy session, but at the same time, there's that similar vein of like, who can I trust? Can I really depend on this person? Can I really trust this person with my secrets or with these things about myself that I don't want to tell everyone? And so I think there's a parallel there. And I think that my just kind of natural ability and then also my work life is going to help me a lot with that.
What excites you the most about the new era of Survivor?
Oh man, I am so excited about the fast pace of it all. I'm a very fast-paced person. I don't like to just sit idly. And so I think the kind of go, go, go nature of it, where you're at tribal basically every other day, if not daily, I guess we'll see how often it really is. I think that's going to play into my hand. If I'm given too much time to overthink things, I will. And so I actually think that this fast-paced, momentum is going to carry me through some things that I might have, double guessed myself or sorry, second guessed myself. But I think that I'm going to be able to move quickly with the game, and that's going to play to my strengths.
What do you think people will perceive you as?
That's a good question. I think I'm always surprised to hear that people see me as like a very put together person. I've been called at work like I'm well organized, people will say, but what they don't realize is that the organization's structure that I've set up for myself is because internally I'm very disorganized and I'm kind of messy and all over the place. And so if this is anything like my real life, in terms of how people perceive me off the bat, I think I do kind of give an air of like, yeah, I've got it together. I'm just fine. But deep down, I'm going to be freaking out with the rest of them. And so it'll be interesting to see if that's how I'm perceived in the game at the beginning. And if it is, I think that pretty quickly they'll be like, okay, no, she's just as misfitty as everybody else.
Great. What type of...
Yes.
So let's talk a bit about, the occupational skills that Elie has and how that might apply to the game. Because, look, not to sort of put these both into the same category, but we had a similar conversation when we were talking about Tori last season, right? Tori was a therapist, very much came in with this idea of like, I have these typical interpersonal skills. I have to talk to people on their worst days, have them open up to me with a first impression, et cetera, that Elie is giving similar language about. I do feel it's a bit different and with no, maligning towards Tori. But I feel like Tori came in at least more so with this attitude of like, I'm going to treat this like a therapy session. Like I'm going to be able to bond with these people over all these different things.
Mhm.
And as we saw early on, was so transparent about it. It really just grinded against the way a lot of people were feeling on her tribe. I think Elie is coming in with perhaps a better headspace about it. Like she has said a couple times, including in her social media video, she's like, listen, I know it's a bit like apples and oranges. I'm going to use more so the skill sets that I have as a psychologist to be able to connect with people, as opposed to treating it as one big 26-day therapy session.
Yeah, I think that where we saw like with some pushback on the idea of what Tori was doing last season was that I feel like that to come in and feel like it's going to be like transactional. Okay, I'm going to use this life skill to get people to be able to give me this information, and then I'm going to be able to advance in the game due to like people. I feel like that Elie is coming at it from a more of an approach of, okay, I will be able to use what I've learned to build relationships, but not necessarily then for my own gain, as like each individual like conversation being something that she can pull something away from, as opposed to just making good bonds throughout the course of the game.
Now, I think what also does apply, though, from her job is her specialization, right? Where she works with veterans who have gone through PTSD. And she vocalizes this in her interview that she essentially has to like talk this person through reliving arguably the worst day of their life or worst days of their life up to this point. And not to say that Survivor is comparable in any way, but I do think in an environment where like there can be a lot of low morale, high stress, high emotions, I do think that actually is, for lack of a better term, a similar battlefield that Ellie
Yeah.
has to fight on, right? Like dealing with people who are at their emotional low and trying to be able to like coax a relationship out of them. I think especially as the game goes along, if she survives for that long, I think that's actually a really good skill to utilize.
And just to go back to like quite a literal example of this playing out in Survivor was the relationship between Denise and Ben in Winners at War,
Mhm.
where Ben is, has been like very vocal about, his issues with PTSD. Denise being a therapist, they were able to really have a strong bond in the game, while it didn't really like end up manifesting so much in terms of like a strategic alliance. I think that they became like very close during that season.
Oh yeah, I mean there are text message exchanges that they
Hmm.
indicate as such. I mean, speaking of those bonding points, like we don't have anyone on this season, I believe, that has served, but I know that, like, for example, someone we'll talk about today, Gabler, his father ended up serving, I believe, as a Green Beret. And so, like, Ellie, I think, has enough tangential experience with the military as well that, like, that could serve as a bit of a connector point. She talked about, dealing with addiction in her family. We talked about this last time. Cassidy lost her sister to addiction. I think that's one reason why they both mentioned Nick Wilson as someone that they really find themselves in. And so that could also be another really interesting connector if they both end up making a merge together. So it's interesting that the realm of experiences that Ellie ends up working with here might end up matching up like almost unnaturally well with some of the people she might end up playing with.
Okay, let's go back to Ellie.
Type of player are you looking for in an alliance?
I think that often people gravitate towards me when they're maybe a little bit quieter, maybe feel a connection towards someone who's going to be more of a leader. I typically take on that role in relationships. I'm going to be the connector between people who might not otherwise connect with each other. And so I'm looking for people who want that in a partner, essentially. I want to work with people who want me. I don't want to be dispensable for people or just a number. I want to be someone who feels necessary as a partner to play the game. So that's kind of my main goal off the bat. But to be honest, my job again is making connections with people who are very, very different from me. And so I truly believe that I can make a friendship or make a deep, meaningful relationship with anybody. They just have to want to make a friendship or relationship with me.
How eager will you be to look for advantages in the game?
I would love to be an advantage queen. I think Drea from season 42 is just like a goddess of them all. I'm so impressed by her and her ability to find all these things, but I say ability because she's working really hard. I know that luck plays into it, but you don't find idols and advantages if you're not looking. I want to be looking. And so I think as much as I can without making myself seem conspicuous, I want to be looking for idols. I know that you've got to hunt for them if you want them, and I'm definitely going to do that.
What's the one thing you told yourself you wouldn't do in this game?
Oh, yeah. One thing I told myself I would not do is step down from a challenge for food. I think it would really take a lot for me to do something like that. I mean, potentially in a situation where I needed to like prove that I was with a group of people, maybe if we all had to step down for rice kind of tribal thing and gain some respect, I might do that. But if it's like you get to eat during this challenge if you step off the block, I told myself I'm not going to do it. I hope that I have enough guts to actually just stay and compete and starve for one more day.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting, Mike. That's very specific. I don't think we've ever heard that answer before to that question, but I think it's also something that I mean, Ellie talked about like eat or compete, sort of like we need people to sit out of
Hmm.
the challenge for rice, but the immunity challenges don't last long enough anymore for people to step down. And I'm trying to remember, even from like the Christian versus Alec, 6-hour marathon, I don't even think that they bring out food temptations to get people to step down.
I'm pretty sure the last time they did it from when I recall was back in Survivor San Juan del Sur,
Yes, that's what
right?
I was gonna say. Yes.
Where Natalie was able to finagle Jeff, do his own negotiating, right? To be like, okay, can you bring me out the candy and basically everything you offered everybody else so that
Hmm.
I can step down, please. I'm covered in spit, sir. And
Hmm.
I that's the last time I can really remember. To that point, I think it's much less likely to happen in the new era as well, right? Where they're really all about the danger and the struggle and the fact that you don't really get any food. You have to kind of forage for your own food. And even if you win a reward, it's one fish. So I think that Ellie won't have to face that situation unless it is really this like altruistic, okay, you have to sit out. And if she does, maybe it's like what we saw in Survivor 41, right? Where everyone who had idols plus Ricard ended up sitting out because she's so flush with advantages as she wants to be that she feels she can do that.
Yeah. Okay. And maybe, in the case of like where Drea had the chance to sit out, didn't want to eat the food, got another advantage from that.
Yeah, so that is like I think the one sticking point I think I have with Ellie. I have a lot of positives about Ellie, as I've spoken about over the
Hmm.
course of this interview. I'm not particularly mad at the idea of like I want to be an advantage queen. I want to get as many as I can. The Drea comparison, while it doesn't end up working completely well out for her, she was
Hmm.
playing like a very good game for the first 2/3 of everything before it came crashing down. But one of the reasons why it came crashing down is because everyone knew she had too many damn advantages. And my worry is as much power as you can amass, and we've certainly talked about this before with Dwight, right? About this idea of like, if you have the advantages, you have the ability to instill fear into other people. If you are out combing through the jungle day after day after day in a small tribe of 6, that could draw a lot of eyes on you. And if that's the thing, all the bonding sessions you could do might not be able to make up for the stigma that you're being sketchy and you're looking for
Hmm.
things by yourself. Again, go back to Tori. That was a target that got painted on her in the very first day, right? When she is off by herself foraging and looking for stuff. Ever since then, it was something that they couldn't shake of her being sketchy and her being flighty. And I think that's a disadvantage that could come, ironically enough, looking for advantages.
Okay. Mike, anything else from Ellie's bio you want to highlight?
Yeah, so Ellie talked a bit about her past, but just to deep dive into it a bit more, what is the accomplishment you are most proud of? She says, I am most proud of persistence in education despite challenges. When it came time to apply for college, my high school advisor told me I would be wasting time and money if I enrolled. But I had a deep desire to study psychology so that I could work towards helping families like mine that were impacted by addiction. I was accepted to a program for students with lower GPAs and or standardized test scores with the contingency that I had to make A's in all of my first semester classes. After meeting this requirement, I realized how good it felt to do well in school, show up to class, and try hard at things that were challenging. I graduated college early with a 3.89 GPA and proceeded to earn a 4.0 GPA in all of my master's and doctoral courses. Take that, stupid tribe name!
Yeah. Joke's on you, stupid name.
I will also say, speaking of stupid, God, I hope this high school advisor was not long for their job. If that's the story of like, I don't think college is really for you. Have you tried more
Hmm.
so putting on a pair of overalls and going to a garage?
I mean,
Uh,
she kind
get
of
your
is
hands
wearing
dirty?
like pseudo overalls, right?
I suppose so. It's more coveralls, I would say. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'm glad that she was able to not listen to that person and move into it. Something we would
Hey,
never know.
there's different approaches that are, maybe that she was looking out for like, hey, college is expensive.
I mean, perhaps, but I would outright say if the thing was your grades aren't high enough, you shouldn't think about studying this thing that you want to study. That feels a little
Hmm.
discouraging. If
Hmm.
that's the lone reason behind it, another answer that I think is really interesting. What is something we would never know from looking at you? Most people don't know that I'm creative and artsy. I love to write, paint, and learn new crafts when I have time for it. I want to put a pin in that, because we're going to find that is actually a recurring theme in the women of Baka. They are three very creative individuals, maybe despite their initial job titles.
Mhm.
And I wonder if that is something that could connect them, a connection through the arts, if you will.
Yep. Is there any sports in Ellie's background?
So she lists for her hobbies rock climbing, skiing, and karaoke at dive bars.
Okay.
So maybe she'll have a Wiggler's Wombats hat in her future. But I think that
Yeah.
she really touts herself as someone who is physically fit. That's
Yeah.
another reason why I do think that Baka might surprise us. Is I would say the vast majority of this tribe either has some background in fitness or has been very vocal about the fact that, like, I have been preparing extremely physically for the
Mhm.
course of this game. And
Yeah.
so I think there's a small chance, Rob, they might end up winning out in the pre-merge.
Yeah, Ellie, I think it is a impressive profile. I think that she has a lot of things that you're sort of looking for, like in a skill set. Knows the show, isn't like overly talkative. Seems to be coming in with like a measured approach, but at the same time, really like looking to pounce on advantages when they come up. Has some level of physicality that they can hold them their own in these challenges. So overall, I think this is a good start for Baca. I'm impressed.
Yeah, I have good prospects for Ellie at this point. Now, look, the way this usually goes in the preseason, who knows? This might be my Sarah Wilson-esque, like, yeah, she's got the goods to go far, and then ends up getting voted out first from her tribe. But at least on paper, Ellie, I think, is really set up well here. Maybe much like the Michelle that she was
Michelle.
compared to beforehand. I think she is someone who has a lot of those soft skills. Seems like she is physically fit without necessarily sticking out immediately as a huge physical threat. And so I think she's got a lot of good components that, again, you and I spoke last time about, like, what does a winner in the new era look like? And even though the sample size is of two, I could see Ellie following another typical pattern, right? If Baka wins out early on, she's able to make those relationships lie enough under the radar and then, like, find and use a couple of advantages when she wants to be able to cement her spot in the end game, where a lot of those social connections come back to give her $1 million.
Yeah. One thing I don't know, how old is Ellie?
31.
Oh, okay. Oh, I really like that. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Very good for Ellie.